Good day. I'd like to talk about getting some gear together on a budget. I think a lot of people are put off outdoor activities in general by the cost. Most of my videos, as you know, are about living history, 18th century living history, and so again my emphasis is on that at the moment. Now I'd like to encourage more people to get into it because A, it is fun, B, for some people it is escapism. It's good to get out of the 21st century and its troubles once in a while. It's a great family activity. It's great for kids, and it's an activity that the whole family can participate in, and I don't think there are too many of those. So budget wise, this often restricts some people. Club fees, for instance, can be quite expensive, and if you're joining a club, on top of the fees that you pay to the club, you don't want to have to spend hundreds of dollars on equipment for yourself. So let's just go through a few items that will get you started. Let's start with the hardware. Knives. Now, knives have specific uses. If you're talking in an 18th century context and you want to be a woodsman, then the knife you want is going to be a butcher knife. It's going to be used for skinning and butchering and self-defense. And the best knife for that is a butcher's knife, and in fact in the 18th century the butcher's knife was the most popular knife that anybody carried. Now if you go to a second-hand shop, you can pick up these knives. I got this one at a second-hand shop. Now this is actually a 19th century knife. It has 5 pins, 5 steel pins, not rivets, pins. Now in the 18th century they were more likely to have 3 pins. However, there were some with 2 pins, there was some with a rat tail tang that pushed into a handle, like on a file has a rat tail tang. But I can't truly say that someone in the 18th century putting their own handle on a knife or making the knife themselves would not have used 5 pins. So I'm not going to say get this knife, take the handle off and convert it. I would say that if you've got a 19th century knife like this, a good butcher knife, and this would make a great knife. I mean, look at the length of the blade on it, and it's got a good curve on it. This is a good butcher's blade. It's worn, but it's still usable, and if it wasn't, I wouldn't have purchased it. This is a great knife, and I would say it's quite passable even with the 5 pins in it. This is another one, very similar. Again, 5 pins. Another 19th century blade, and a really good blade. Carbon steel, obviously, and yeah, a good find. I think one of these cost me $4 and the other one cost me $7, something like that. I mean, you can't beat that for price. If you want a knife for another purpose, then get that knife. I carry 3 knives. I carry a hunting knife, which is a butcher knife. I carry a legging knife, which has a shorter blade, which is a backup knife basically for butchering and for eating with. And I carry a clasp knife for doing camp chores, making trap triggers, making pot hooks, that sort of thing. Each knife has a specific use, but within those specific uses it can have other uses as well. But you will not find a knife that will do everything, will not do everything right. Okay, so if you want a knife for doing heavy work like cutting trees down, well then you don't want a butcher knife. I mean, I would not use a knife for that sort of work at all. There's just simply no point. You want to get yourself a belt axe for that. Now, this one, as far as I know, is a 17th century hatchet. It's a lathe hatchet. It was my father's, but I've seen similar ones to this in second-hand shops, and you'll probably pick it up for next to nothing. As you can see, it's got a hammer pole and a small blade. It's a great little hatchet, great little belt axe, and you could quite legitimately carry one of these, because you would legitimately be able to access one in the 18th century or even earlier, and therefore you've got every right to have one. If you're going to do heavier work, get yourself a hatchet. Don't look for a heavy knife that you think will do a dual purpose job like cutting off branches and trimming stuff down. Get yourself a good hatchet. They're not that expensive. Again, you can pick up hatchets like this in second-hand shops for under $10, and you know, some of them just have the heads. This one, when I actually found it, there was only the head. My father had died, and a lot of his stuff had been left to rot, and the handle had actually rotted away, and there was only the head, so I put a new helve on it. And the same goes in a second-hand shop. If you find the head, get the head, make yourself up a new helve for it. Okay? If you find some 20th century knives, which you'll find will have rivets in the handle, they stand out like a sore thumb. They didn't have rivets in the 18th century. They had pins. So this is a 20th century blade, but I've put another handle on it with 3 pins, so it can now be used in an 18th century setting. Here's another one, great little blade. I'd say this one was French. They typically have this shape of blade, and again I've taken the handle off, removed the rivets, and I've put in 3 pins, and that's a great little knife. It would probably even make a good legging knife, but also a good main knife. It's the blade is quite long enough to be able to use for butchering and skinning and self-defense. So there are your options. You'll pick one of these up for just a few dollars. Why would you spend any more money than that? Staying on hardware, let's look at steels for flint and steel fire lighting. This is a piece of an old file. This piece I found already broken. I got a grindstone and I hand ground one edge flat, taking the serrations off it, and it sparks well. I can make fire with this, and it cost me nothing. I found the file somewhere. But if you picked up an old file in a second-hand shop, it's only going to cost you a few dollars. And the condition doesn't have to be good. I mean, it can be rusty, it doesn't matter, you can clean that up if you're going to use it as a fire steel. These were actually used. I have seen originals that were pieces of file. So it's not a matter of you could just use that until you get the real thing, which of course you can do, but if you like, keep it. Piece of quartz, again, picked up off the ground, works fine with the steel. You don't need anything more. Quartz does tend to break up a little more than flint will, or agate, or chert. Oops. But there's generally more of it to be found, and it does work, so there's no problem there. You want a sharpening stone? I carried this one for years. Not a very big one, and it takes a bit of getting used to using a short stroke on a small stone, because you not only have to move to the length of the stone, but you have to move the length of the blade. So it's a matter of bringing the blade down and working it so by the time you get to the other end of the stone, you're also at the end of the blade, and that's how you sharpen a knife. And as I say, I carried this one for years. I found it in a creek, and it's got one flat side to it, or pretty near flat, and yeah, it worked okay. Could have been better, and eventually I did find one that was better, but this sufficed at the time. If you find a blade that's got a rat tail tang on it, and you don't want to go to too much trouble making a new handle for it, get a corn cob. I mean, a piece of corn in a supermarket isn't going to cost you much if you're not growing it already, and you simply push the rat tail tang into the corn cob. You can do this with files too. Several of my files have got these handles on them. They're a lot stronger than you think they are. They give you a great grip, and they're light, and as I say, cheap. So that's an easy solution to that. Pouches. You want a belt pouch? This is leather that I picked up in a second-hand shop. It doesn't matter whether it's a woman's leather skirt or a man's leather jacket, or in fact a larger leather pouch. Look at it from the point of view that it is leather, not what it is. It can also be dyed, so if you found something that's pink, you can actually dye it. Dye, unfortunately, adds more expense to it, so if you can find something that's the colour you want, good. But it's easily made, and again, it's going to cost you next to nothing from an op shop. You know, St Vincent de Paul or the Salvos. Again, I'm not quite sure what this leather was from. I think this was part of a coat, an old coat, and this is a drawstring pouch. It's actually it belongs to one of my sons, and it's his fire bag. He keeps his tinderbox and his flint and steel and that in here. I don't know what sort of tin he's got. Let's take a look. There's his steel. You know, the steel's tied off so that he can't lose it. Okay, he's got a pressed steel tin that he's using as a tinderbox.